Landman's future genuinely looks brighter now that Tommy is back in charge, not because he suddenly became a hero or a savior, but because the show finally feels aligned with its core identity again. For the first time in a while, the series has clarity about who is driving the story and why. Tommy regaining control doesn't magically fix every problem, but it restores something the show had been missing for stretches of Season 2, direction. With Tommy back in a position of authority, Landman feels less reactive and more intentional, and that shift alone changes the energy of everything moving forward. One of the biggest issues Landman faced before this shift was fragmentation. Power was scattered, decision-making was muddled, and responsibility was constantly being deferred or blurred. Tommy often found himself caught between competing interests, forced to manage crises without having the authority to prevent them. That made for realistic drama, but it also slowed the narrative down. When no one is clearly in charge, the story tends to stall. Tommy stepping back into leadership doesn't simplify the world of Landman, but it sharpens it. Conflicts now have a clear center, and that makes them more compelling. What's important is that Tommy isn't returning to power as the same man he was before. He's carrying the weight of every compromise, betrayal, and mistake that came before. That history matters. His leadership now feels earned rather than assumed. He knows what happens when systems rot from the inside, because he's lived through it. That experience makes him more dangerous, but also more grounded. The show benefits from that complexity. Instead of watching a man learn the rules in real time, we're watching someone who already knows them and chooses how to break or enforce them. Tommy being back in charge also restores Landman's thematic focus. At its best, the show isn't just about oil or business deals. It's about power, responsibility, and the moral cost of leadership. When Tommy was sidelined or constrained, those themes became abstract. Now they're personal again. Every decision he makes has consequences that ripple outward, affecting workers, families, and rivals alike. That sense of accountability gives the story weight. We're no longer watching chaos happen to Tommy, we're watching him shape it. Another reason the future looks promising is how this shift rebalances the supporting cast. Characters like Cammy, Cooper, and others function best when they're reacting to a strong central force rather than drifting through parallel storylines. Tommy's return to leadership creates friction, and friction is where Landman thrives. Relationships become more volatile. Loyalties are tested more directly. Conversations carry subtext again. Instead of everyone circling the same problems, characters are forced to take sides or make choices that reveal who they really are. There's also a renewed sense of momentum. With Tommy in charge, the show no longer needs to stall to justify an action. Moves can be made. Risks can be taken. Deals can go wrong in ways that actually matter. That forward motion was something Season 2 occasionally struggled with, especially in its middle stretch. Now, the narrative feels primed to accelerate. Success or failure won't come slowly. It'll come violently, decisively, and with lasting consequences. Tommy's leadership also reframes the violence and tension in the series. Landman has always flirted with neo-Western brutality, but that violence feels more purposeful when it's tied to clear authority. When power is ambiguous, violence feels random. When power is centralized, violence becomes strategic. That doesn't make it cleaner or more justified, but it makes it more narratively satisfying. Tommy being in charge means confrontations will feel intentional rather than accidental, rooted in decisions rather than misunderstandings. What really makes this moment work, though, is that the show doesn't pretend Tommy's control guarantees success. If anything, it raises the stakes. When you're in charge, failure belongs to you. That's a much harsher position than being trapped under someone else's leadership. Landman is now set up to explore what happens when a man who understands the system too well tries to reshape it anyway. That tension between knowledge and ambition is fertile ground for drama. There's also a sense that the show has learned from its earlier missteps. The slow burn of the past now feels like preparation rather than hesitation. Tommy's return to power isn't a reset, it's a culmination. The scars matter. The mistrust matters. The damage done to relationships hasn't been erased. That continuity gives the future of the show emotional credibility. Viewers aren't being asked to forget what came before. They're being asked to watch how it finally pays off. In the end, Landman looks stronger with Tommy back in charge because the series works best when it commits to decisive leadership and clear consequences. The world of oil, power, and profit doesn't reward indecision, and neither does compelling television. With Tommy once again steering the ship, the show feels confident in its direction. It knows whose story it's telling, what it wants to say, and how hard it's willing to go to say it. That confidence is what makes the future feel bright. Not safe, not easy, but finally focused.